Brown is an educator and social service leader with over 30 years of experience working with students, teachers, paraprofessionals, and staff in a variety of educational, institutional, and community settings. Richard has a Master of Science degree from the University of Illinois, and though he initially trained as a general educator, his interest in students with learning difficulties soon led him to the field of special education and social services. Richard currently works with UCP Seguin Services of Greater Chicago as Vice President of Infinitec. As an education director, trainer, AT specialist, and consultant, Richard has blazed a trail for all learners to participate in academic and social arenas throughout our nation. He combines humor and wit with usable solutions, and his unique ability to blend theory with practical applications makes for an unbeatable combination. Please help me welcome Brown.
Wow. He better be good with all of that. Guys, I want to tell you a little bit about Infinitec because we have members in the room. I want to thank NSSEO because they are members of Infinitec and they get their professional development. And some of the things that they get on professional development is issues like transitions and employment for us. We also have members from our Social Service Coalition in the room from Little City, Countryside, who recently merged as well. So we have some expertise in the room. So in your area, you have some folks like Casey Burke over there that is running employment services programs that you can go to if you need help in your area. Is that helpful? You got to do better than that. It's early. Yes. You got to go with I believe, you know? So we're going to step up a little bit. Let's just go right to it. So employment first. How many have had kids that graduated from college? How many of those kids are working? How did they get those jobs? How did they get the job? They networked. They used your influence to get it done, correct? We're going to talk a little bit later about that and how important it is. There's words in the field that we talk about and they call it social capital. We're just saying gossip. The gossip about my kid's the greatest kid that ever lived. And I want you to give them an opportunity. We're going to look at that a little bit later as well. There's some note cards on your table. If you have something that you really want to write a question about and you want to remain anonymous and the question that you ask, please just pass the note cards around and we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. If it's something I do not know the answer to, I'll take that note card, research it, and give you that information back. Fair enough? Okay, so here we are. Presentation goals. We want to open up a discussion on what you know and understand about employment, first particularly. And then one of our key objectives here is to kind of give you a definition of employment first. Does everyone have a working knowledge of what employment first is when we talk about that? We are in the state of Illinois, right? Are we so lucky? Are we lucky? Aren't we just the luckiest people in the world? Because we're in the state where we have about roughly 50 states. Is that right? Is that still true? We're about number 47 when it comes down to funding for people with disability. About number 47. We argue because we've grown a little bit because we used to be number 48. So we see that as growth. We're number 47. And when it comes down to employment, we're even lower in that state. Our funding does not follow our individuals to this stream. So we have some real problems in our state. I'm not going to say it's election time, but read carefully. Read carefully the information that support folks with disabilities, especially when it comes out to giving them a community access piece, because that's huge to employment. When you know better, you do better, right? You know those experiences that our children naturally get from being on baseball teams and going to awards dinners and doing all that stuff? Our kids with disabilities don't get those same options. They don't show up often in the same way. Sometimes we have to force those options because we're forward-thinking parents, right? We're forward-thinking, but it doesn't happen as natural for our kids. So we have to do some things, and we'll talk about those as they walk through the process. Employment first. Did you know that Illinois is an employment first state? Scary. I just got to tell you, absolutely scary. We are considered an employment first state by policy, but by action, we have a long way to go. If you want to know where your values are when you're dealing with our state economy, follow the dollars, right? The dollars kind of speak to where we are. So we are looking at, in the state of Illinois, we are in transformation. And in that transformation process, what we're dealing with is the issue of how do we do employment differently? I don't know, I'm a little older kind of person at this point. I remember that there were some things that they called back in the day, way back in the time, they called them personal center plans, and they're new again. They just popped up, they're new, that came out of the, and so Illinois has, although other states have been forward on this, Illinois is just catching up 5 years later. They had to renew their waiver agreement with the feds. And part of their waiver agreement is that they had to do more community experiences, and it affected transition, and it affected employment, and it affected community providers. Everybody's trying to wait to see what's happening with the state. We're the 5th richest nation in the state. Does that make sense? 48 was serving people with disabilities. We make more money. We're number 5. So that's kind of hard when you look at the justification of the two. A little tough issue to deal with. So we're going to talk about employment first and what Illinois is trying to do with that. We want to explore your knowledge on some of these subjects. We want to explore your knowledge on sub-minimum wage and what that means, right? And we're going to explore your knowledge on WIOA, the Work Innovative Opportunity Act, Medicaid funding. That's important to you as your children are growing up and they're moving from different types of funding cycles that are very different. I'm sure you already have heard the nightmare stories of what happens when the yellow bus stops running. You've heard that, and some of us are waiting. Transition is something that I want you to write down someplace. It's not something that happens at 14 and a half. Transition happens always. You're always looking 5 years down the road at what you might want that child or that service or that support to look like. We can't afford the luxury of waiting for the school to do it, waiting for a community provider to do it. We kind of got to throw in there and guide them in that direction. They're waiting for regs to come out. By the time the regulations and the rules come out, your child will have graduated twice. It just takes that long to move that elephant and get it into place. So we're going to talk a little bit about Employment First principles. Here's our greatest challenge. It's really not the regulation, the rules, the politicians, and the money. I'm a believer that the money is there. We just need to repurpose the money in a different way. I believe that the dollars are already there. We just need to look at it in a different way. We fund currently, our current funding goes towards institutional settings. So that means whether it's a center-based program or not, we don't fund innovation in Illinois. So we fund the status quo in our particular state. So changing the entrenched culture and beliefs regarding employment for people with disabilities. Okay, so tell me, do you have a child with a disability?
Yes.
You do? Okay. Have you tried to find that individual job?
Yes.
Tell me, what was your biggest struggle?
Keeping the job?
Say, you got him a job? And then keeping the job? What type of supports or services did you need in order for that to be less of a struggle?
I needed support of an agency to help with, job coaching.
Job coaching. There's something unique. And then we look at our DRS funding cycles and what we have to go through. You almost have to become a lawyer to navigate our systems. Really not. You just have to become a voice and keep becoming that voice till you get what you need. And you get what you need. What we know about individuals with mental health issues as they go and explore the job market extended services used to be a service we had in Illinois. They cut back on extended services. So people with this mental health issues tend to cycle every 6 months, every 18 months, so they can make it past the probationary period. But once they're past the probationary period, all of our DRS services go away, all of the other stuff go away, and they're stuck on their own. So if there's no natural supports, we need to be able to talk about extended services. And when we can't do them with our governmental piece, how do we do it naturally as a team to get it done? Does that make sense? We used to have that. Now we no longer have that as an option in the state of Illinois. But I'm going to tell you, whether it's job coaching, the extended services, it's really this issue. It's about culture and our belief system. People are never going to tell you why they did not hire your son or daughter. They're not going to tell you. It's not politically correct. They're not going to tell you that information, but quietly, they're thinking, especially if you have a child with significant disabilities, they can't do the job. To me, that's just a failure of correct job matching. We didn't do our homework enough. We just stuck somebody into a slot, a position, as opposed to what their real gifts and skill sets are. And they do have them. A little bit later in the slide, I'm going to be talking about some folks that we probably worked with as we grew up. You know, not everybody does the job the same way, right? Some people work with a high quality some days. Some people take vacation days while they're getting paid. But yet they get paid the same wage as the person that's working at the highest level of performance. Does that make sense? Okay, so look at, everybody put your hands up, put them up. Let's go, get them up, get them up, get them up, get them up. Read the top of the slide, say, we have to believe. And believe, you gotta believe. Look at this guy here. Mr. Churchill is saying, a pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. So when you get beat down by the system, know that it's just a part of the process, because the system is designed to say no first most of the time. You have to share that dream, that story, and that skill set. And you should come with some evidence thereof. So when you're doing things, it can start right in your home. If you are working in your home with a child and he is sitting at the table waiting for a meal to arrive and not participating in that process, this is where we learn our work ethic. When you told the kid that here's your chore chart, you need to wash the dishes or take out the garbage or cut the grass, and the child without a disability doesn't have chores. So that's how we teach learn helplessness. And we deny them that skill set that they necessarily need to get to that work. So they already know about, the expectations. And when he was like 6 or 7, when he made the bed, remember that when you said, oh my God, he's making the bed. The blanket was this way and the comforter was the other. Oh, and you wrote pictures and you put them up on, he's making the bread. Look at him make the bread. And if he made the bed the same way when he was 13 or 14, you yelled at him and he was grounded. How dare you? So the same expectations in our own personal biases we have to ream out. If we expect individuals out in the community to have them, we got to get rid of our own stuff. Does that make sense? So the first work is on us. Then we start knocking on the door of those folks and saying, hey, let me show you how you can do it. Video resumes and things of that nature as strategies to show them what they can do. So all students with disabilities should be viewed as capable and successful for employment. No more asking people when they're in high school, do you want to work? Who has that option? Where does that come from? Do you want to work? If someone's sitting in your house and they're looking a little bit and you leaving out to go to work, you are saying you got 2 months to get a job. If not, bye-bye. That's it. So we do it with our kids that don't have disabilities, are typically developing peers. We should have same expectations for our kids in school districts. Choosing work is no longer considered, choosing not to work is no longer considered okay. So your first option when you go to a community service provider, you want to go to a community service provider that has a strong employment program. You really do. And we have it backwards right now in the state, folks. What we do in our community service providers, once your kids graduate from high school, and you know how you do the tour, and you go around and you look at all the sites and you see, and they have pretty walls because they paint them very well. But you need to look at the quality of services and supports and where their dollars and their monies are going, because employment should be the first option. that they're looking for. Does that mean that everybody's going to choose employment? Yes, it does. You're choosing it and how you're working that. But employment can mean different things for different people at different times. We'll explore that because some of our guys may not, because of our own stuff, may not be ready for employment because of the way our systems were designed over the years. Our systems were designed over the years just like special ed, right? We take them and we heal them. And 25 years after special ed was reenacted, they took a look at that and studied special ed and said, is it doing what it was supposed to do? You know, so we have to take a bigger look. No more preserve benefits at all costs. You know, I'm so glad you're having the WIPA people come in and speak to the guys about this benefit issues, because that's some of the struggles that parents have to deal with. If he starts working, he's going to lose Social Security. No, you just need to become knowledgeable about that, because this is what I say. And sometimes with my parent groups, guys, can I just be plain? Can I be plain? So let's remember those, it's the old time Roosevelt used to get on the radio. I know, right? Just stop it. But don't even think it. But Roosevelt used to get on the radio and he used to have these fireside chats, right, with the nation. And sometimes you got to have a real fireside chat. And the real fireside chat is just as you live, you're going to die. And some of our children do not want to take care of their siblings as they get older and throughout this process. So you have to set them up to be as independent as they possibly can. And I don't know any adult who can choose to do what they want to do without an income coming in. And that's work. And work does more than just provide the income. It provides all the good stuff. You don't go to a cocktail party and say this, that, or the other. What's the first thing they ask you at a cocktail party? Hi, my name is, so what do you do? Then you go through a whole speech about, well, I'm the junior candy maker for the candy making company. I make candy and the best candy in the world. And you have something to say. We want our guys to be invited to those conversations as well. So, services, not caretaking, but investment in people. Working is the norm, not the exception. Say it with me. Say working is the norm, not the exception.
Not the exception.
So you're going to be told no a few times, because remember, they're having a time to change. And they're going to tell you about, if I have to do it for this child, then I have to do it for every child. And you're going to say, I'm not asking you for 100 child, just need it for this child. One at a time, so then you can share that with another parent on how you navigated that system and got it done. You have to have some risk takers, because you're moving from a system of entitlement, where there are laws, federal laws in place in the school program, to eligibility. That's a whole different mental state. Remember when you went into the IEP meeting and said, gosh darn, I'm going to take it to due process if you don't get it done, and you have 60 days to do this. Not in the world of adults. You have to be eligible to even have that conversation. And eligibility is a tougher nut to crack. It's just a tougher nut to crack. So funding and responsibilities. Leaving one system where things are free and other things are not mandated. Your child may have a communication device that they're using in the school system. That doesn't go with them when they leave. Now you got to go through Medicaid. And I got to tell you, when you go through that particular process, their first answer is no. And you have to get somebody to say they're going to do it. Speech therapy services and adult services, that's a medical model. They send you over to someplace else to get that done. It's not integrated into your services on a regular basis. So you as parents, when you look for those services, you're saying, how can you help me if my child needs AT services? What do you do with AT? What do you do with employment? What do you do with this? This is how you look for that shop. Don't look for the building. Look for the support and the services that that building may offer you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Somebody say amen. Amen. Okay, so this is where we are today. This is the 80s. I was back there. Back there, they said 30 years ago, but I was only 10. When I started, I made that stuff up. It was the 80s. But in the 80s, we had a lot of institutions in Illinois. Do you guys remember them? Probably many of you were told that your child may need to go to one of those eventually as they aged or things got better, or they would be better off if they went to this type of setting. Not to say bad, good things about the setting. It was what we thought was best practice at the time. Then we start moving forth into the community. Our governor, Jim Thompson, at the time, stretched forth his hands and said, go out and multiply. Did he do it because it was a good thing to do? Didn't I just tell you to follow the money? It was cheaper to serve people in the community than it is to serve them in an institution. Does that make sense? We've all heard the nightmare stories from the 70s when Geraldo Rivera got his fame, and we talked about Willowbrook, and they went into the institution and showed you horrible things that were happening there. They're still happening today in many places. So you really have to take a closer look. Segregation to integration. We thought that in special ed and in adult services that if we took them to a special school in a special place, we can provide them with all the services that they not needed. So one of the things that we just looked at was my kid went on a bus to his regular school, yellow bus picked him up, the short yellow bus came and picked up the other child and took him totally away from his capital in the social network. Does that make sense? So we really thought some things were happening. We went from isolation to family and friends. These were our attempts on the orange side to get closer. This is where we were. This is where we were trying to go to. In the 90s, with the school, we started looking at words like a free and appropriate education, FAPA, right? We started looking at those issues. Look at this. We started thinking in the 90s, well, you know, the American with Disabilities Act was 1990. George didn't know what he was signing. It's 20 years of litigation after that act. And our citizens with disabilities are still not invited to the Constitution fully. They're still not full-gauge citizens. You cannot be a citizen if you cannot work. You have to work to be a part of the economy, to be a part of the system. So we went from not employable. We said, well, maybe some people are employable, you know? Maybe a few of those guys can be employable. So we made up our mind that they were employable, right? Until you went to DRS and tried to get a case open. Then you had to fight for that a little bit. Then they went into unemployment. They were the undercounted unemployment. And then they went from unemployment, if they got a job, to the working poor. Still dealing with the issue of sub-minimum wage. They were dealing with those issues. Integration versus inclusion, treatment versus support and services. I was so happy about that turn in the 90s that we started looking at more supports and services. Now, it's 20 years later, and we are still just catching up on that concept for us. So dependency to independency, choice to no choice, self-determination, I want to concentrate on here. Please, when you go out, dear parents, don't look for programs. Look for employment and meaningful days. How do you set up a meaningful day? If you go to your favorite restaurant and there's only spaghetti on the menu, that's all you know is spaghetti. So that's the greatest spaghetti in the world. And until you taste real spaghetti. So you have to have a menu of activities from which to choose. In that process, you want to choose an agency or do it yourself that has discovery built into it. So our kids can make informed choices. So they can have enough opportunities to see things that are happening out there and make a true informed choice. How do you know you don't like pizza if you never had pizza? Because someone told you? It's just amazing. And people change over time. Discovery is not a one-time activity that you did back at the transition stage, 14 and a half. This person has 7 more years before he's graduated. Something changed. He may have learned something else. What I learned from running our recreation and leisure program, we do these surveys, right? So we really want to know what the people think. And one of the things they tell us all the time is, it's not enough. It's not enough because we've taken them out, and once you take them off the farm, and take them into the city, you cannot get them back on the farm. They want more. They would never had that concept of more if they never got off the farm. So you got to get your guys an opportunity to discover. And that's what happened to your typically aged students when they were joining baseball teams and soccer teams and going to friends for sleepovers. They were discovering their skill sets. And our kids with disabilities sometimes were well protected by us, so protected, wrapped in a bubble, that when we lost them, or when we were able to, when school stopped, we were at a total loss for those guys. So this is where we are trying to get to self-determination. And this is why you're hearing so much about the personal center planning process again. Personal center planning is not new information. It's just that our schools and social service agencies are beginning to take it a little differently for us. So let's go just down to how employment first is defined. Employment first is defined in the regulations as, the federal regulation as, employment in the general workforce, not our sheltered workshops as such. And I have no qualm against sheltered workshops. I remember folks talking about them. I see them as part of the transformation, but people need to keep moving. They can't get stuck there. I believe if you're going to do that type of work, it should be time limited if you're trying to build up skills in those natures. But if you're doing that type of work, you got to pay the people for their time. So these production schedules and things like that that are in place that you get paid less than to do, that's not a place that you want your guys to be. Because what we do sometimes is we teach the community that our folks are less than. We'll take your contract, we'll work them this way, our folks are less than. It's an accident, but it does have a perception on what happens to our folks when they leave out there as well. So it's in the general workforce, first priority and preferred outcome. Did you hear this say all? It didn't just say for our, quote, higher functioning individuals. It didn't say for our guys that are on the cusp. It didn't say for our LD students only. It didn't say for the people in the STEP program. It didn't say for the people that are involved in SLOT or SCORE or whatever you call it. It said for all students. That means that kid that's sitting down in a wheelchair, multiply impaired, none able to speak without a communication device, can't operate his own wheelchair. We got to find some value in what he can do to set up work or a meaningful day. We got to be able to do that with these guys. Guys, stop looking at that. Just stop. We're not trying to help you become an astronaut. We're trying to help you find your next job. We have all worked jobs that move to the next jobs. How many of you guys did waitressing before, or waitering, or all that? Worked in food service? Food service, our folks they call them like I think they call it the 4 Fs. Folks with disabilities kind of work in 4 Fs. What is that? Food, flowers, filth. That means janitorial and all that stuff. And what's the other one? It's another F. Food, flower, filth. Well, I'm forgetting the other F. It'll have to come to me. Maybe it's 3 Fs. But they primarily go in those areas. But a lot of people start off in those areas. They say flowers because most of our agencies have some type of floral shop attached to them as social enterprises and things of that nature. But food service is a good place to start for a lot of folks. My daughter started out in food services. You know Sonic, you know that Sonic restaurant? You know what they used to have to do at Sonic, because it's a throwback, right, to the 50s? What did they have to do at Sonic? Roller skate and clean the washroom on roller skates. This is not bright. This is not bright. If you don't tell them to take off their roller skates, they'll skate in the washroom and clean the roller skate. Do they need a job coach? Some of the people that you're working with every day, totally able-bodied, side by side, you've been job coaching them for years. If it wasn't for you, they would be unemployed. No, don't go in there and say that to them today. It's a bad day for you to curse them out today. Don't say that to them today. You might want to wait a second. Come on, let's go out and have a conversation before you do that. And you save that person's job so they can save their family and keep working. These are natural supports. So we're not looking at, helping you to find your dream job right away. But we don't want to kill the dream. Sometimes the dream is the purpose for which you were created to be on the earth. And you don't even know what that is until you explore. So you have to explore many things to get to what the ideal dream was. You know how we change people's dreams, right? Son or daughter says to you quickly, I want to be a painter when I grow up. He meant an artist that paints. And you said, well, you really, starving artist, you have nightmares. He's going to be on this street corner. He's going to be starving, painting stuff. He'll never own a house. He'll never have this. So you told him to become a painter. And now he's miserable because he did not get his dream. You got to get your dream, and you got to respect the dream, but you got to have the skills and the steps to get there. And part of our job is to teach those skills and steps. Does that make sense?
We say, but what's your day job?
But what's your day job? There's some things that we do.
You could be an artist, you could be a writer.
We still got some starving artists in the room. But with people with disabilities, we have little time. So we want to guide them closer and closer and closer toward that and target that. So that's where the assessment pieces come in place. That's where you're sitting down and have those conversations that you're having with them. That's what personal centered planning is about, is talking to that family and that individual. Oftentimes, have you ever participated in a personal centered plan meeting, an IEP, an ISP? ISP is the adult level, individual service plan. IEP is our school level. We've gone through that. All of us gone through that. Or a personal centered plan where the person that you're talking about is not in the room. How do you do that? How's it a personal centered plan if they're not even present? Or they have no voice in the process? Because we have 15 minutes for this meeting, right? And you have to come back another 15 minutes if you want to talk about it a little bit more. No, it's over a lifetime. So you start capturing that. And you, as the caretakers of these individuals, the parents, the facilitators, the coaches of these individuals, you probably know them best in your mind. You know your aspect of them, but they have a whole different relationship with me. And I know a whole different aspect of them that you may not know. They may not never want you to know. So here's the deal. True employment is a wage above the state or federal minimum wage, whichever is greater. It's a job performed in an integrated setting. So what does that tell you? Automatically, we got to take some steps. If my baby's in a sheltered workshop, I need to take some steps. I don't need to tell them that you need to turn it into a community program tomorrow, but I need to take some steps, get in there and start getting them moving toward this deal. It's growth and advancement. So if you're a member of an enclave, you know what an enclave is? This is a work crew that kind of comes together. Many companies hire them, like Manpower and things of that nature. They get a crew that goes out and does X, Y, and Z. Well, in the world of social services, we have enclaves as well. They do jobs. We have a contract with the business. We pay them, etc. There has to be room for growth and advancement in these jobs. So you're not stuck there forever, in that particular position as you develop those skill sets. There has to be a chance for benefits, so that you can come off the entitlement services if you have to. Medical benefits, floating holidays, holidays off. There has to be a chance for those with our guys. How many can even believe that that person I described earlier in the wheelchair will have that situation? I kind of know a few that have that situation. So you have to keep working toward that. Part-time is a place to start, but you want to eventually look at how that can grow into full-time for your individuals. And that's how you look at that situation to get a little grow. Oh, we're going to give a brief history. Didn't we say we're going to explore a little bit about the minimum wage? A little bit. Guys, this was a great thing. Here I'm back at Roosevelt again, right? So it's World War II. We're having conversations. All of the men have gone off to war. They're dealing with a situation of that way. People are way back. And you're a woman, so you don't count. I'm sorry, it's National Women's Day, but you really don't count. So you're not that important. We already pay you 80% on the dollar. So guess what we were paying you back then? That's where sub-minimum wage came from. It was an attempt to get a workforce. It's not a new idea. It originated in Europe over 300 years ago for us. It was based on inmates in extremely poor social deviance. So you had a debt to pay. You came in and you worked as an indentured servant, basically, to get that debt paid off. And they paid you a stipend for your work. That's kind of what it came down to for us. But shelter workshops and sub-minimum wage, the Fair Labor Act of 1938, that's how long ago that was. Don't you think that should be coming off of the book? It's 1938. that we were looking at this, established what we call 14C certificates. That's a special criterion that people have that they petition the Department of Labor for, so they will have an opportunity to pay you a sub-minimum wage, right? People were happy. I mean, parents were elated back in the day, especially in the 80s, like, oh my God, he got a check. It was $1.45. Took more money to process that check than it is actually to get it done. If you just follow that check through the banking system of the day, it took a lot of money to process that. But people were thrilled because the child never had a check in his life. So they were so thrilled about that. And the concept of working started popping up for folks. But following World War II, shelter workshops saw a significant growth. So we had it done to the women first. And then we started saying, well, if it's a good idea for them, let's try it over here, because there was a need. There were contracts. And we started going out as community service providers. We're advocates for our folks. We said, we know society's not ready for them to go out in the workforce. There's prejudice and bias for people with disabilities. They're just not ready. They won't allow them in, no matter how gifted they are. You ever walked into one of those workshops and you saw this guy and say, why is he here? What is going on? It's because society wasn't ready. Society is now ready. We see people with disabilities all the places. They're not in closets anymore, in basements, and they're not across a shame. They are right there out in the forefront. I dare you to go out this weekend and not your child, because you may have children with disabilities. You're going to find a kindred spirit out there someplace. It seems like I have radar on me because everybody with a disability seems to follow me. They find me. Maybe it's just because I'm keenly aware, because you're going like, oh my God, look at that. And he's bagging at the Jewel and working full time and part of a union, because Jewel is a union shop. So he's learning all of his rights and things of that nature. He is also at the movie theater taking my ticket and saying to me, you really don't want to see that one, something of that nature. So following World War II, we saw a big growth. So this is a very old idea. And just like they said, time's up on the Oscar walk of life, time's up for this. It's something that we need to look at a little differently. And we got to kind of walk through this path, because there's some trepidation. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Our problem is, in our state, transition means we stay until the federal government beats us up. So the state is not changing because it thought it was an idea. It didn't become an Employment First state because it thought it was an idea. They're following the funding. They have until 2022 now to make some significant changes. It was 2019, but then we elected the president, and they moved it to 2022. So they have a little time. So what does this mean to us? It means that we're going to work at phasing out these shelter environments. Shelter workshops is not a building that you see people sitting in like a factory doing widgets. Shelter workshop is a mentality. Stay with me now. I'm about to turn a corner. Stay with me. Shelter workshop is a mentality. So when you go to look for services, you want to make sure that the people that are providing those services have a forward-thinking mentality, that they believe. And that these things and these problems that they're presenting are just problems. And that there are opportunities to learn. But you're going to have to be risk takers in this process and preserve the dignity of risk for your child. You can't wrap them in a bubble and be afraid that if I put them on transportation and they're used to the yellow bus, and I ask in the shelter workshop or the community provider saying, hey, why don't we try PACE transportation? That's good, but not for my kid. You're going to have to take some risks, because you really don't know what your kid can do on that transportation. You never put them there. And the one thing I know about working with folks with disabilities is I know nothing about working with folks with disabilities. Every single day, these folks teach me something new. When I make an assumption, somebody proves me wrong I hate them all. They just get to me. They teach me different stuff every day. So we're going to phase out, and this is where WIOA is coming in. WIOA is increasing the scrutiny on these 14C certificates, making it more difficult for agencies to even ask for them. They're taking a hard look at the field of indentured servitude when it comes down to waiters and waitresses and their tips. They're taking a really hard look at that because that's a sub-minimum wage situation that people are cast into. That tips account against them in certain places. In the state of California, you have to make a minimum wage first, and any of your tips then go on top of that. That's why we are forced, in many ways people feel forced, but if we grew up practicing this, to pay that gratuity of 20% or better, because that person is not getting a full wage. Does that make sense? Yep. Time's up? Okay, so added requirements prohibit sub-minimum wages situations. Let me go back there. Okay, so what does this mean? About 2015 cents an hour sub-minimum wage is paid to workers. What's the minimum wage in Illinois? How much is it? Is it 8 1/4? We're better. This is one thing we see that. We're good. We're 8 1/4. What's the federal minimum wage? 7 something, 7.75, I want to say, or something like that. So Illinois has a better minimum wage than the federal government has at this particular time. But U.S. citizens working in the shelter workshop earned about $1.36 an hour. I usually do this. I usually bring peanuts out so that you can have something to eat and share, because we're paying folks peanuts for this type of thing. They can't even get transportation. Transportation to the job is $3 if they're using paratransit. They can't even make an hour, so by the time they make it to work, they're done. We are supplementing that. They can't even make enough at work to get back to work and home. This does not make sense to me. Everybody put your hands up with me one more time. Put them up. Say heart damage. Heart damage. Leads to brain damage. Brain damage leads to perverted actions. So if we can't get it right in here, we can't transfer it up here, and we can't do the work out here. Does that make sense? So that's why we have to start in a different way. We have to start looking at how we do this. Don't blame the community provider. Get in there and start working with them. You're not going to have the same impact that you had at the federal standard of a school. So you need to wake up. It's not happening. They don't have to take you. They don't. You don't have to be grateful that your child has a place to go. You need to go in there and start making your voice heard at all levels. So, outdated perceptions. And access employability depends on already. Oh my God, I did not put that up there. Did I say that? Remember those days of pre-vocational? Pre means never. I want you to know that. Write it down someplace. Pre means never. You can't be a little pregnant. Either you're pregnant or you're not. It's just a rule. It's just the way it is. So when they are telling you, we have a nice pre-vocational program, they said, I'm going to imprison your child for 30 years. That's what I'm going to do. Thank you, Mom. Okay, so place. Individuals in vocational preparation programs determine the viability of that through integrated employment. Integrated employment is what you're looking for with this. Guess what? Employers are ready for us. We have been incentivized as employers to give out tax breaks for having individuals with disabilities come in and work in the workforce. As a matter of fact, some employers said, we can't find enough of them. Can you help us find people that are qualified to do this work, and we'll be happy to create relationships with you. Companies like Walgreens have their readiness program that they put in play for you. TJ Maxx is a big employer of individuals with disability. Jewel Osco in our area is a big employer of folks with this. They figured it out. Guess what else they figured out? Those folks don't miss as many days. They actually show up to work. And here's a silly concept. They do the job to their best abilities every time they show up. They don't take super long smoke breaks 4 times. They do what they're asked to do. So outdated perceptions are low expectations are not realistic. When I talk about employment, I'm talking about all. I'm talking about the individuals that most people don't think about. Anybody that walk, hop, skips, and jump, that is verbal, we say fine. Maybe has a behavior problem, a quirk or two, we say fine. But when they get complex and they need some help in the washroom, and they may wear adult undergarments, and they need to have their dignity preserved during the day, we say they can't work. And they really can. It's just another problem, right? There are no natural supports for changing folks in the washroom. We're going to need services for that. So we're going to talk about when those services are needed and how they are done. They'll help you eat if you need something to eat. Somebody sit and have lunch with you. But going in there, yeah, professional. We need a professional to help us. But do they need to be there for 12 hours? Is there a way that we can use technology to have them contact us? Is there a way we can start monitoring when they ebb and flow of things? Didn't you know when your young child went to the washroom? Some people, in the world of day training, people say, well, he's going to go right after lunch. So we need to make sure excellent things happen. We need to take that knowledge and use it for the employment cycle as well when we're looking at it. Low expectations. Here are 10 effective practices. You need vocational training. Notice it doesn't say pre-vocational training. Vocational training is real training for job skills. Our people do not lose their jobs because they can't do it. Let me tell you why they lose their job. You ready for the big secret? Sure. It's soft skills. They lose jobs for soft skills. It's the guy that goes into the washroom and, there's a rule in the men's washroom, ladies. I'm sorry, but I got to share it with you.
You are not going to do this.
I'm going right there. There's a rule. Some washrooms have the little blinders up. Yeah, you've probably never been there because you've probably never seen the bathtubs on the wall we call urinals. But some have the little blinders up. You can't look to the left or look to the right when another guy is standing next to you. You can't drop complete trowel while you're in the washroom. You look kind of strange. People are going out and saying things about you. It's not that you couldn't do the job. They're going complaining about this, that, or the other. It's soft skills. It's not taking social cues and knowing when the conversation ended. So we hadn't taught them when conversations start and when it's spatial proximity, not coming up and being a close talker to someone because you're big and you're threatening to them and they don't know you that way. It's all those skills that cause our people struggles in their job. Do we need a full-time job coach for that, or do we need a job club for that? Are you working with me? So it's just looking at it a little different. You need actual paid work experience. People need to know what's in it for me. Some people work to play, and some people play at work. When you find the job that you were intended to do, they tell me you'll never work a day in your life when you find that particular job that you were intended to do. So paid work experience is important. So you can buy stuff. Individuals that live in community settings and residential programs in our system across the state average about $30 of extra income a month after all their expenses have been paid for. From that $30, they must do all their recreational activities, all their personal care needs, such as toothbrushes, hair combs, and things like that. They must buy everything. So do you think they're getting out? Because we go out and buy all the other stuff with that $30. They don't even get to exchange the money that they need to do. So we rob them again of those skills. So vocational assessment, you need to have someone that can help sit down. You are biased. I'm going to tell you right now. You cannot assess your own. You can be part of the assessment process, but you cannot assess your own. Because the truth of the matter is you got to have a fresh set of eyes on this individual to hear things differently and to take a chance. You may think in your head, really? He's never said that to me in this life. He may have never said that to you in this life. But here, let's raise our hand again one more time. Here we go. And God we trust. From everybody else, we need data. Are you with me? So you got to get the evidence supported. Your emotions will make a fool of you every time. So don't go there on the emotional high. Get the data support. Show your child doing these things. Show your child in this area, and it changes their disposition and how we seek services for them. All of us have our biases. We all have them, and we need to have some evidence to show it differently for us. Community-based instruction is huge. Here's the thing that I get a kick out of when I hear people complain about community-based instruction, especially when it comes down to our guys who are a little bit more severe and profound. Well, they can't go out into the community because it's too cold, you know. And then the question becomes for me, well, how did they get to you today? Did they miraculously just show up in the room like I Dream of Genie or something? Or did they get on a bus, come out into the community and do X, Y, and Z? Our folks are more resilient than you think they are, and they want to be out. And their behavior we know goes down when they are out. We know that contagion effects go down. Are there risks? Absolutely. But we minimize the risk, but yet preserve the challenge. And that's how growth is. If you want to see change happening, there's going to be friction at the changing point. There's going to be heat. In order for things to transform, something has to be pushed forward and backwards in order for you to move forward. Do you see that movement? Something has to be pushed back. So we're pushing back old ideas. We're pushing back old premises. We're pushing back old bias so we can project forward toward the future. Community integration is more than just a field trip. It's not going out for 5 hours into the community. We don't go out for that. When you go out into the community, you go to run an errand. You go to visit somebody. And that visit is not, visit is not forever. If you stay too long, they're giving you social hints. Well, it's getting pretty close to dinner. And you're not welcome to stay. So it's time for you to go. Et cetera, right? It's meeting someone at the coffee shop. It's learning about that experience. People don't have to know that they're learning how to navigate the community, that they're doing safety checks, they're learning how to cross the street. They don't need to know all that. All they need to know is at the end of this walk, I'm getting a pie and a donut, whatever I wanted to do, because that's what's in it for me. Then we can teach you all those things along the way. Have you ever seen people that were acting out right before you left home? And then you tell them, well, you're going to miss your favorite movie. The movie starts at 1 o'clock and then the miracle happens? Because now they've learned to tell time. And they also learned that they are going to miss the movie because they missed one or twice. They go, ah! Okay, I'm ready to go. Some of our husbands and wives do the same thing. Same behavior, right? Interpersonal skills training. Student participation in the IEP, ISP, all of those, we got to wait and hear their voices. And if they don't have those voices clearly identified, we must find out how they communicate so that we can hear them. Personal centered planning, new word, personal centered planning. And it simply means that we're going to sit down with not only that student at the IEP process, we're going to take it a step further and we're going to sit actually with time with the stakeholders. Because what we're doing is we're looking at that student or that child involved in that process, and we're trying to explore where his natural supports are. Because I asked you, how did you get your child a job? And many of you said the way the job happened was you networked. We called somebody. We put in a good word. And we got to do the same thing. Our kids need their social capital investigated. Interagency collaboration. No agency does this alone. Agency A may be perfect at assessment. Agency B may be got the greatest job coaches on the planet. Agency B may be the people that dream big and set up the plan. You have to look at interagency collaboration. If they're trying to do it all on their own, that's going to be a little bit of a strategy because we don't have enough knowledge to do it all on our own. It's the power of the team that makes the difference. And all people are valued in the team. I know what it is, because, I've gone to a school or two and, sat on both sides of the table. The table when you are the teacher involved, and we hate you, you parent people. We hate you. A lot. So stop coming in, will you please? Just stay on the other side. And I've been on the other side of the table and saying to individuals, so what's so hard about him emailing his homework to you? Well, then I have to do it for everyone else. Is everyone else failing? You had enough time to admire this problem. Now we're talking about solutions. We have to embrace all members of the team, both on both sides of the table. Okay, so this is like 20 years in the making. Look at the year of this. This is 1987. Didn't I tell you it was a new idea? And they knew it before 1987. There was a guy named Lou Brown back in the 70s and the 60s that was a pioneer in educational inclusion that really said, parents was, school districts will say, those parents, those great parents that were pioneers, they put their kids in regular schools. They said they didn't want them in a tuition out program. They put their kids in the regular school setting. And Dr. Brown was having a conversation with the school district one day, and they were saying, well, he's significantly involved and he can't go up to the program. What would happen if there was a fire in the building? He said, let him burn. That seems cold, doesn't it? But the concept that he was saying was he has an equal right like anybody else. What would happen if there was a fire in the building for anyone else? You would go and get them out. If someone tripped while they were in the fire, would you just leave them there? You would get them out. So this is not going to be an excuse to do this. So the placement is not a result of, this is the piece I love. This is the piece I love. Did you read all of that piece? I want you to hang on the last line there. Rather, it's a function of our inability to design services system responsive to their needs. That's 1987. And look what our central thesis is, that shelter environments, 1987, shelter environments should be phased out in favor of employment opportunities in integrated settings. I like to take credit for the idea, but it was there a long time ago. So let's go through some killer concepts. Let me put my crossbones up there. I'm going to hit it again. Don't wait till they're ready, because they'll never get out. Take the chance. Remember when you used to go out and when your kid was learning to ride a bike the first time and you were like kind of behind them with the bike? Some of us were smart enough to put those elbow things on and helmets on, but I didn't grow up in that era. The concrete was a way to say that you didn't get back up on that bike. They didn't have helmets. There weren't little cute things. I wasn't wrapped in bubble wrap. If you hit the ground, you knew to lean to the right. Not to lose your balance a little bit. Natural consequences are a great way for people to treat. We don't learn a lot from all of our successes. Sometimes we can't even identify what we did. What we kind of resonate with is some of the failures. And our kids need an opportunity to fail and succeed. We're so busy trying to set it up for perfection that there's a problem and never gets done. That's where the pre-concept comes in. Why are you wasting your time trying to teach that young man? He's 25 years old and he didn't learn to tie his shoes. Don't they have loafers? Don't they have shoes you can just slide your feet in? What is the matter with us? We still are trying to teach that goal, right? There are things that we absolutely know. Is it important that he learns how to tie his shoes? He's already ran out of the house without them on. So is it really that important that he learns how to tie them? This is goofy stuff because we were brought up in an era where we said we had to task analyze things, we had to backward chain it, we had to forward chain it. We had all these theories. At the end of the day, our guy was still at the house and his brother and sister left. And we want to give him the same opportunity. So readiness pre means never. Don't be the reality police. This is a way you kill dreams as well. He says he wants to be a rapper. A question I'm asking is, what is it about rap that you like? Could not be that he wants to be the rap star, but he really likes what they're wearing. It could not be that he wants to be a rap star, but he really likes that genre of music. So we have to ask a second question, and then a third question, and then a fourth question to start digging at the layers of a person's dream, right? Ask any 15-year-old what they want to be when they grow up. Some of them going to tell you very much, I want to be this because my mom was a doctor and my dad was a lawyer and my sister was a this. And some are going to say, here's the classic, I don't know. And they cut their words down to 2 seconds of communication. Remember when they were back in what was it? Kindergarten with their big heads. And they came in waddling their heads around, telling you everything that happened in their day. They would say things like, and the teacher said, and the teacher said, and the teacher said, and the teacher said, and we got this, and oh my God, we had specials today. What are specials? Oh, we got gym, we got this, we got that. They talked about it a lot. They're 5 years old. They have a lot to say, and you listen. Let's throw a few years on there. They're now 16. They cut their words down to one-word answers. Where are you going? Out. What you doing? Nothing. Who you hanging with? Nobody. They cut it down because as they're grown, they know that you can't handle the truth. so they're not going to tell it to you. So we have to keep asking questions of our kids with and without disabilities. We have to ask them, what is it about that you want to do? And what do we, instead of saying reality police, you don't have any skills. How can you be an astronaut and you can't even read? You want to be a lifeguard, son? Power wheelchairs don't swim. You can't say that to them that way. You can't kill his dream. You got to help him come to his reality. And people kind of go out into their own way. I'm still going to be an NBA basketball player one day. As soon as my heart tells me I can do it again. So we want to avoid that concept when we're looking at employment. So I'm going to go through some employment myths with you. Is that going to be fun? Are you ready for some fun? Facility-based programs prepare people for employment. In fact, the research shows the exact opposite. The best way to prepare for employment is to be in employment. That's the best way. Most of us are in school programs, and if our school programs have a vocational component, you may be familiar with things like STEP, right? A STEP program as such. And those jobs stay at the school. We have to look at jobs that transfer beyond high school. So when he's in his senior year or his junior year or that year, whatever that year is, when a kid leaves high school and he works at the movie theater, naturally, he can have that job all the way through college. He does not have to. My daughter works in assisted living. She has graduated from college, but she's had that job all the way through at that particular point. So then she gets to pick and choose. She's buying time, as she says, while her dream job shows up. And I bet you when her dream job shows up, it's going to be somewhat of a nightmare because it's dealing with us, human beings, for us. So here's another myth. Performance in simulated work. Remember the days where they used to have the fake grocery stores? Anybody remember the fake grocery stores? Am I the only one? Mariana's is down the street. Go to the store, man. Come on out of the house. You got boxes of fake food sitting on a shelf where we're doing fake exchanges with fake money. And then we expect our kids who have problems generalizing to generalize the monopoly money into real money. How does that work? Why waste time? Get them into the grocery store. Simulated is another way. You know how you do. I'm a great simulated golfer. The best. I can stand there and whack them with the best, right? But golfing requires that you walk. So simulation doesn't work as much. We can predict who was, Can we really do that? It's a myth. We don't know how successful people are going to be. We can prepare them with the best skills that we have at the time. And they're going to need new supports each time they pop up. So let's see what's in your employment future holds. If this was the case, we would need HR departments. How many of your HR departments have hired people that you wonder how they got the job? That you sat back and went, oh my God. HR department, recruitment departments are looking at the minimal qualifications to need the job. And that's what they're looking at. We need conversations with HR departments to say, let's customize this job for this individual. And this will be a great task to do. So we have to go do customized employment. The rate of production is the primary factor for determining employment readiness. When you're in shelter workshops, if you can do things really fast, you see now he's ready for the job. He can work on a factory line or something like that. Rate of production is not the fact. In fact, today, work environments, rate of production is only one of many factors. Sometimes it's not the factor. What is an employer looking for today? Do we know? They're looking for people who can get along with each other. They can teach them the rest of the stuff. They're looking for people that are willing to work in collaborative teams. They can teach them all the rest of the stuff. They're looking for people with good moral fiber. They can teach them the rest of the stuff. If they spend some time with training and coaching, they feel very comfortable with teaching them the rest of the stuff. So your ability to drop 3 widgets into a bucket in a minute is not going to determine your readiness for employment. What's readiness for employment? Get out there and do it. So that's why work trials are so important. That's why going out and having internships are so important. That's why going out and having jobs in the home. Help make him wash the dishes. If he only can bring it to the sink, demand that he brings it to the sink. Teach him that so that he doesn't grow into a world of entitlement. There's nothing like people who are totally able to walk, hop, skip, and jump and tell you I won't do that because I got staff members to do that. That's crazy. But we've taught them that, right? My mom does that for me. No. So, you need to know how to search for a job to be ready for employment. Do you really need to know how? How many have made that call? Look, you're my brother. Your nephew's coming. I don't care. He's coming and you will employ, he's Monday. You can either employ him or come to his funeral. I don't know which one you want to do, but you're gonna get him some work. We've made those calls. We used our influence. We got into a place. I don't need to know how to look for a job to do that. This is a person that's already behind the 8 ball, didn't get all those experience. They need services to help them find the job. But is that going to stop me from getting it? So I got to go do 15,000 internet searches? 80% of jobs are found through networking, through families and friends. I want you to say that out loud. 80% of jobs are found through networking to families or friends. You are important. We need you in the employment hunt. We need you. We need your social capital. There's only so many dollars that an agency, a school system has to expend. You are the biggest spender of those dollars by your influence. You know somebody that knows somebody. I got a guy for that. Everybody's got a guy. I got a guy for that. So you need to have that guy work with your guy to make him a guy. Simple? Okay, every employer is not has the same employment standards and the same method of hiring. They don't. They don't. Not at all. Standards and methods from companies, they vary. What they're willing to do. What is it all about? It's not about the company, it's about your relationship with the local manager. Did you hear me? You shop there all the time. You spend thousands of dollars there. It's not, hi, I'm Richard Brown from Infinitec. I'm coming in to do some employment assessments. No, it's you saying, hey, I noticed that when I come into this particular store, the clothes are usually out of order. Do you need help with that? That's called an informational interview. You go in and find out how you can in. You're thinking all the time, my son may not be able to do it, but there may be somebody in the family connection group that can do that. And let me tell them about the lead. And they can go and find that lead for them. Are you interested in doing internships? Can we do an internship here? Can we do a job trial here? Can we just shadow you for a day so our people can learn about what this experience is like working in retail? Can we walk with you through this process? They have very different hiring practices. You've seen that. Some people check your social media pages when they go to hire you. They want to go and see what your character's like, and many of us would not be able to be employed if they checked ours. So we have to teach our guys about what they put up online and how they look at that. So employment standards are inflexible? Not true. Just move right past it. Employers are expecting perfect employees. Back in the day when I was a young educator, I had 2 rules in my classroom. The first rule was, Mr. Brown is always right. The second rule was, refer to rule number 1. And I'm working with kids with emotional disturbance and behavior disorders that need choice, that need to be able to negotiate. So do you think we had a few power struggles? Yes. Now those rules were not on the wall. Those rules were in my heart. I felt that I was educated. I went to college. I was a smart man. So we're not looking for perfect employees. We're looking for someone that can do the job, that can solve a problem for us now. So in transition, we're looking for those skill sets that build up so people can solve the job. You're looking for transportation training, because transportation is a #1 barrier for folks with employment. You have to be able to take the risk with transportation. Stop waiting on agencies to pick you up. Present your child with a skill set already, saying that, you know what, he can go from this spot to this spot. We haven't tried this spot yet. So they can know where they can start their skill set and move them on. Uh-oh. What readiness really means, guys, is that you're motivated to work. The only way you get motivated to work is you have experiences, right? So you have to have a lot of experience to know what your motivation is. Motivation leads to action. Action leads to those jobs for you. It also means that people understand their strengths and their needs and their interests. The question that sometimes you ask people, is this something you want to do for work, or is this a hobby? And they can still do both. By the way, when I finish basketball, I'm going to retire to the PGA, because I know that I can beat the #1 golfer in America right now, because I played Wii golf and I do pretty good. So I know that I can beat him right now. People understand the supports and needs. Stop looking at the persons as deficits and their oranges, because our school systems and our systems in general, you know, the thing that they concentrate on is what is missing, as opposed to the gifts that are coming with the person. Do you know how much it takes for someone to tolerate you in their face? You know why people with severe and profound disability close their eyes when you come near them? Because they didn't like you over there. And when I close my eyes, you do disappear. You're gone. I hated you all the way across the room. I can't just ask you to go away. I don't have a way to tell you that. So I take you away. And they are so brilliant because they have to deal with a lot of different people and teach all those different people how they communicate. Do you hear what I'm saying? What's innately in them? Can I employ that? You're darn right I can. These guys know how to problem solve. They just have no way to tell you that they know how to problem solve. They're solving problems all day. They're from the book of, I can show you better than I can tell you. I'm just not doing it. Let me sit here and make myself as rigid as I possibly can, because I hate you. Are you with me? So I need to turn that to good so they can find a job. The availability of supports, look at that. Ratios are important. It's really not about the ratios per se. It's about having the services when you need them. Having them when you need them. Uh-oh. Here's some reasons that understanding the benefits and blocking benefits. I call this noise. Yes, you need to understand what happens when your individual gets work. Once they get work and they find a job, you need to understand what happens to them with Social Security. Yeah, you need a clear understanding of benefit analysis. That's just something that you need to know. Kind of like you need to know when you invest in the stock market what your portfolio is doing. You kind of need to know what their portfolio is doing as they're adjusting things off. There are no jobs, you're better off. This is all noise. I think I should go to work. Have you ever worked with anyone that couldn't get along with others? Oh, you're working with them right now. You go to the meeting and they sit in the meeting, yeah, but they make the meeting longer than it has to be. You can't even make a decision about lunch. So, had behavioral outbursts. So what's the difference about our folks? Didn't get the job done very fast. I use an analogy in my some trainings that I do. I tell them, don't be surprised that the Christmas is December 25th. They don't move it around the calendar to fool you every year. It's constant. Some people can't make deadlines. Have you ever worked with those folks? Got distracted easily? Can't hold a conversation for long? Acted impulsively without thinking. Have you worked with somebody that's just plain lazy? Wasn't very good at their job, but manage to still keep it?
What if your kid is all of those in the screen before?
Well, that's where natural supports come in. That's where you know where your kids and services are, if they're all of those. They may not be all of those. They just may be all of those in the situations they were given. Because I know that when we're doing what we want to do, that choice, some of those behaviors go away. There's some quirks you're just not going to get away. If, the person is on the spectrum and he has a certain issue with sound, lights, and things like that, you're just going to have to be aware of that. You're going to have to teach calming techniques. You're going to have to teach him to talk to himself. There's other things that you're going to have to do. You're not going to get rid of the disability, but you're going to step up on the services and supports. And you're going to do some informed stuff for the place, people to look at. I'm talking about the folks that we work with on a daily basis. These are those folks. So, WIOA, the Opportunity Act, signed in 2014, designed to help keep job seekers access to employment. WIOA is designed to match employers with skilled workers. Does that mean they need to know how to do all aspects of the job? No. That's why we do those customized employment opportunities where we can go in and identify where there is something in your company that's going on that you might want to do. That's why you see so many people rolling napkins in some of these restaurants, because it takes time to do that. And they want their waitresses and stuff to move the table quicker. So you may not be able to move the table, but you can roll the napkins. And they want to give you an opportunity to do that. That's a customized type of job. WIOA fosters regional collaboration between businesses and the community, and one that includes people with significant disabilities. I like to talk about that because most people don't think about those guys. And my heart is with those folks. So I like to remind you of those folks as we go through this process. Just doesn't mean one. We also place specific obligations on the 14C certificate, and it also placed limits on sub-minimum wage. So that's what we all did. So I'm saying follow that money. That money's coming down to the state. Illinois wants to get reimbursed by the state for Medicaid funding, and this is a part of that. So that's why they're making these transformational changes that they're walking through. It's really about, the main priority is that people with disabilities will become employed. Secondary priority is that it drives funding to an employment outcome. And how it impacts, money, more money. I'm going to go past guidance, we already talked about it. We all is saying in the rules, competitive integrated employment is not these things. It's not an enclave, work crew, or provide sub-minimum wage. We always also talking about the impact on your child as they get ready to graduate. Remember at 14 and a half, you're supposed to have a transition plan in place. But a lot of us do that as a check in the box transition plan. And we never think about things like the kid may want to go to college. Our kids already come with transition plans. They have career counselors that sit down with them. They have vocational programs that they have a track they can go to if they want to do that. But our kids with disabilities, we have to put it in the law. WIOA increases opportunities, obligations for sub-minimum wage, and offer choice. So when this young man comes out of college, pre-employment transition service for all eligible students with disability, that means job exploration and counseling. That also means work-based learning experience. Cannot tell you how important that is. So at the school level, you should be talking to your school about increasing work-based learning experience for them. Counseling related to transition, self-advocacy, because people need to be able to speak up for themselves. You're not going to be on the job with them to get it done. So they amended the Rehab Act of 1975 to include these type of things. I'm running through these because I think these are pretty much self-evident in your handout. You have them right there. But I did want to tell you that Medicaid funding is a major public payer of long-term services and supports for your folks. So as they move from the educational system, Medicaid funding is going to carry them for the rest of their lives in this process, especially if they're not working. If you're subject to Medicaid funding, you're subject to a life of poverty for the rest of your life. So it's important that we give our guys an opportunity to do something a little different. So those services must be integrated to receive Medicaid funding. They must be selected by the individual. That's hard, right? Because remember, he didn't come to the personal center plan. So that's hard. They must ensure privacy, dignity, and respect, optimize individuals' independence, as well, must not be isolated to the community. So you just jumped through like 5, 6 slides there because we're looking at the last one, that's employment principles. Employment First is challenging, and the reasoning for special wage certificates. Employment First is identifying strengths and job matching. Just concentrate there. We're looking at strengths, job matching, customizing, carving, and choice. That's what it's about. You already do that naturally. I'm just asking you to go out and do this thing here. Get away from that. You see what Lucy's saying? Everybody know the character of Lucy. So why would you put Lucy a job dealing with people? Because you have a slot? Lucy's going to have some problems. Some real problems. You don't have to do the educational system. It must be viewed as a core component of the system. And I think schools are doing a better job at it as they're catching up. They're learning a little bit better about it as they walk through it. They know that the old way is not the way now. And they're also working hand in hand. That's beginning to bring those adult providers to the table and have conversations with them as well. Parents are becoming better educated so they know what to ask for. You are just like your child. If you don't know what to ask for, you don't know what the even services are out there available for you. You may not know about the PUNS list and what the PUNS list entails, how to get your child those services started up. And you may not learn about that until you're 18 and a half and it takes 3 years to 4 years to get on the list. You know what I mean? So I'm going to walk past these in the interest of your time to be respectful, but I want to leave you with this one. There is a job for everyone who wants to work, regardless of disability, need of support, or economic vitality in their community. We don't have time to do this, but I really would like you to. The point of this is a famous picture. It's called Vanity for it. And I usually ask people, what do they see? Some people will see a skeleton when they first look at it. Well, sometimes you got to look a little deeper when you're working with folks with disabilities. Some people will see the lady looking in the mirror. Some people will see the lipstick that makes the mouth that's on the mantle, her little dressing table. People are going to see different things. And I ask you to look a little deeper sometime when you're working with folks with disabilities. You can't see the skeleton, that's the nightmare. I need you to see the beautiful lady in order to make a difference in their lives. And that's where we talked about social capital already and the power of networking, and said that 80% of the jobs that we find are with people who do this from family and friends. And we're going to walk past that because that's already in your handout. There you go. Choose a job that you love, and you never work a day in your life. Match your child up with a job for they love, and they'll keep it for a long period of time. Get the right supports in there. Know that you have to check in. Just know for a rule, every 90 days, the agency that you work in might want to stop by and have a conversation with that person to see what's happening. Not that person, but that employer, to see what supports are already there. You don't always have to find the answer. There may be an EAP program right there for mental health that person can go and get that we didn't know about, that was a benefit of every employee in the company. You know? Guys, please fill out your evaluation forms. I want to thank you for your time. You've been a great group to work with. Thank you so much.